don't seem to understand. A shame you seemed an honest man.
And you don't seem to understand. A shame you seemed an honest man. Today I want to talk about Silent Hill 2. You know, I think this remake really just brought the franchise back. Silent Hill, baby, it's returned. Silent Hill used to be known as that competitor to like Resident Evil. They were essentially the same game, if I'm being honest. They were a part of the same genre. Hell, even at one point, you know, people were like, "Oh, James looks like Leon." No, hey, Leon looks like James. How dare you get it right? It was always sad to see Silent Hill just sort of fade away after a few canceled projects, like, you know, one being PT. PT would have been sick, would have had Norman Reedus, and it would have been overseen or even completely, and I don't want to use the word overseen because I think it might have had Hideo Kojima's full involvement. I'm not really sure about the details anymore. It doesn't really matter, unfortunately, because PT got canceled, and then as a result, the Silent Hill project got canceled. You know, when Silent Hill 2 Remake was announced, you know, some might have even said this was the series' last chance to make a decent comeback. And whatever way you felt, it's back because this remake is amazing. This is an absolute banger of a remake for a hood classic like Silent Hill 2 because there was just something about the 2s back in the day. Resident Evil 2, Silent Hill 2, something about the 2s, Halo 2, Modern Warfare 2. You know, whenever the sequel came out, it was actually a banger. You know, it was a genuine improvement from the original. Safe to say, there might be some concerns with remakes of such a classic, but Bloober Team, I'm surprised that's their name. They really shocked me with that name, but you know what? Doesn't matter what their name is. They have a little funny name. They did a damn good job. And without further ado, I kind of just want to get into the thoughts and feelings about the game since I just finished it about a week or two ago, and just let y'all know the scoop. A little bit of a disclaimer, obviously there will be potential spoilers ahead, and I have not played the original game. This is actually my first Silent Hill game ever, and as such, I don't have the same opinion on certain mechanics and certain things that are just like Silent Hill related, you know? So, what I mean is things that are staples of the genre, I just don't have the same, feelings about them. At any point in the review, if it seems a little weird that I made a comment on this thing, well, you know, I'm just judging it on what I have to judge it on, and that's this game. First things first, you know, what this game does good, it does really freaking good. I'm like, I can't put it to words how good the story is. The story and presentation is like seriously amazing. It really does feel like a movie when the cutscenes are playing, and every time a cutscene would play during my playthrough, you know, I'm a streamer, I'm a sorry, I don't like to use the word content, but I'm a content creator. Typically in the profession, you're supposed to talk a lot, you're supposed to chat a lot, you're supposed to yap a lot, even during certain serious cutscenes. But just the way the game presented itself, I just couldn't do that. You know, I didn't feel the urge to talk over the cutscenes. I didn't feel the cutscenes were boring by any means. I just felt like they were very immersive. They were super immersive, and every time I watched one, I was sitting there silent, trying to get it, Silent Hill. I was sitting there being very immersed and trying to gather as much information as I could because, you know, the way the game's story is told is very, it helps with that immersion. It helps with getting into the cutscenes. And speaking on the way the story is told, it is told in a little bit of like a breadcrumb fashion. I don't know real story terminology, like maybe a person who really writes a story has a proper term for this, but in the way I interpret it, it's told in a breadcrumb fashion where it's very gives you just very little itty bit and pieces through the lore. Like there's a lot of stuff to read, and it'll just keep making you ask questions. Eventually you'll get some answers, usually via cutscenes, but even then the cutscenes are so few and far between that, you know, like the point I made earlier, I just felt compelled to get every little bit of story I could from the cutscenes, which is why, again, I was so immersed. You know, the notes are really interesting. Usually the notes are just like some weird crazy notes where it's like there's like a word repeated over and over and over. It's like, he is not the one, 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 or like something like out of the Stanley Parable. But usually the notes will tell stories related to the area that you are currently in. Sometimes the notes can relate to the greater story of Silent Hill, because that's what we're here for. You know, the story centers around James and a few other key characters like Angela, Eddie, and Laura, and Maria, and Mary. The main story that we care about is James's story, but then you have the other side characters that are kind of telling their own story, which is really cool, because then it kind of opens your eyes and it's like, oh, the story is about Silent Hill. Or is it? Or is it not? And it gives you like choices of characters to care about. I think that's the beauty of the game, is that because there's all these, there's not a lot of main characters, right? There's literally 5 characters telling the story through a very small set of characters, where nowadays, you know, you have a million characters you could talk to. You know, some of them are sides, some of them are not, but every single character in Silent Hill 2 is pretty much a main character, so it feels really it feels like a quality versus quantity type thing with the story. A few things that I will talk about on like the more neutral / negative side. The puzzles are a bit hit or miss. This is just like a thing of the time, right? The puzzles in survival horror games like Resident Evil, like Silent Hill, it was just a product of its time, and you know, they had to bring the puzzles back, because really the puzzles is sort of debatably like 30% of the gameplay. Probably most of the time you're doing puzzles to progress to the next area. I mean maybe 30% is a little low. I would like random, no math required percentage number here. I'm just like, maybe it's 50%. I don't know. The puzzles, you know, if you don't like puzzles, there is luckily a difficulty setting to change the puzzles to make them extremely easy, you know, or you can make them much harder if you're a big fan of solving puzzles, but it's a classic in the survival horror genre. It's hit or miss, like I said, so it's up to you if you like them. They're there. It is what it is. They'll always be there whether you play on the lowest difficulty puzzle setting or not. So, and unfortunately, what this game does bad, it actually not. Let me take back the unfortunately. What it does bad, it does mediocre, and mediocre is not necessarily awful. You know, mediocre is, you know, average. The game's combat really is the weak point of Silent Hill 2. It's not awful. It's just, you know, you spend a majority of the game fighting, you know. Well, you spend a good chunk of it doing puzzles, but then most of the time the puzzles are just explore this area completely, and eventually the puzzle will solve itself. And most of the time while you're exploring the area, you're fighting, and, you know, a majority of the gameplay is going to be fighting. And you would just want the gameplay of the combat to be a bit more entertaining, just to, you know, keep the loop fresh, or as fresh as it can possibly be when you do the same thing over and over again. It's just not that exciting to fight in this game. You know, a lot of it comes down to fighting the same enemy type, and you'll eventually learn how many bullets this enemy type will take. And there's not a lot that you can do creatively. You can change the amount of bullets you use. You can change the certain gun that you use to make the enemy go down faster. Or you could just dodge everything and use your melee weapon. And, you know, it's not very creative, but it's not its strong point at all. You know, you really play Silent Hill for the story game. That being said, though, it is a significant improvement over the controls of the original. But the original was more of like a top-down, I want to say tank controls, but it might not really be tank controls. Probably just felt like really clunky. Obviously, right? Older game, but still a significant improvement, and that's always a plus. A thing that this might be a little bit, well, this is my review, so this is my opinion, but the game loses a lot of atmosphere from the modernization process, I feel. I do think the third-person POV makes the game lose a lot of its cinematography. So, like, if you just look back at, like, maybe Silent Hill 1, or the, even just, you know, Silent Hill 2, the game that this one is based off of. At times, the game would go into a fixed camera view, and I've always liked games that do that. I don't really love that everything has to be told from this over-the-shoulder third-person POV these days. I much prefer when sometimes you get a fixed camera, and then it's part of the presentation, the storytelling, and that's kind of missed here, because it's just modern games. Everything in Silent Hill 2 Remake is told from the over-the-shoulder view, aside from cutscenes, obviously. But there were times where you would still have control of the character. It would just be from a fixed camera, and that's really cool because it brings some tension sometimes. If that's the goal, if that's the goal of that camera angle, to bring tension, then you could do that. Sometimes you just do the fixed camera for like an epic shot, or maybe a epic scenic view, but we don't really get that kind of stuff here, which sucks. And that's pretty much my Silent Hill 2 remake review, like talking about it video. I don't really like to use the word review because I'm not being too professional about it. But yeah, I think the game is amazing. I think it's very much worth the buy. It's not a game for everybody, right? This is a very story heavy game. And it's like, this people that like Heavy Rain, they like Heavy Rain. They love Heavy Rain. Not everyone loves Heavy Rain, and I think the same thing will come true here, because this is not a gameplay heavy game if that's what you're coming into. Some horror games do fulfill that criteria. I think Resident Evil fills that criteria a little bit more, because there's a lot more gun options. There's a lot more like fighting the zombies is a little bit more exciting in that game. But I do think the story is just not as good as Silent Hill. Let me know what you guys think about the Silent Hill 2 remake if you've given it a shot. If you are planning on giving it a shot, let me know. Let me know if I'm convincing you a little bit or not. That'd be kind of cool. But anyways, that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.